Here's one of the funny part, though, that I firmly believe in, is that my job is to work my way out of my job.
Welcome to Driving Change, where we go for a drive with leading technology executives and dig deep into their beliefs, habits, routines, and influences. Today we take a ride with Phil McKoy, CIO of Aimia, and discuss a variety of topics from the changing role of the CIO, staying relevant, advice for up-and-coming tech leaders, balance, and fishing from a kayak.
How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Good to see you. You might be warm in that jacket.
Yeah?
I don't know.
No, I'm
It's
good.
a little warm out.
I'm good.
All right, let's go for a drive. Thanks for meeting me.
Oh, no problem. I figured what the heck they're doing on that side of the road.
So we're gonna go quick over to Bull Run Coffee. I've been trying to explore all the cappuccinos in town, and
Is that a particularly good one?
that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
So I want to try it out. So hopefully we'll be able to have enough time to make it over there and back. And along the way, it's rerouting me now. Along the way, then we can ask some questions.
Cool. Perfect.
But
That works.
so we met, I think it's been a couple years now. So we met when you were leading technology over at Target.com.
Yeah.
And since that time, you changed gears and positions, and now you're the CIO over at Aimia. How's that?
It's great.
Change been for you?
It's been a great change. You know, it's a much smaller company. There's so much that goes with that around, you know, team, function, culture, decision making, and it's not that one is bad and one is good.
It's different.
It's different, and
Yeah.
for me right now, for where I am in my life and my career, it's a welcome change.
So how do you see the role? Like, you went from leading .com to a CIO role. How do you see the role of the CIO changing from years past?
Well, I think it's a much more strategic role than I think it has been in the past. You know, I think traditionally, you know, you hear, and it differs by organization certainly, but I think traditionally CIO role has been viewed as sort of this operational, tactical support function, if you will, right?
Yep.
Cost center, if you will. And I think what's changing, and it's really clear in the role that I'm in the business that I'm in, is that it's as much a revenue driver as any other role in the organization. And in organizations like mine, where, you know, a big part of what we do is sell not only loyalty services and strategy, but loyalty platforms, it becomes the core tenet that we go to market with.
Yep.
And it may not be that might not be what we make money on,
Yep.
but it's how we frame up all of the other value-added services that we deliver to our clients. So for me as a CIO, for this CIO role, I'm at the table in any and all business growth discussions, not just the operational questions that might come up from time to time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's fundamentally different than what CIO roles have been in the past.
Yeah, so how do CIOs that are in that traditional landscape stay relevant or become relevant?
Know the business.
Know the business.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's it.
With all the change in technology, which is changing business faster and faster,
Yeah.
how do you stay on top of, or how do you know you're using the right technologies, the right methodologies?
Yeah. So, you know, I think that's a really interesting question, because as a CIO, I think that if you believe that you can be, or you should be, the world's authority on all innovation and technology, you're setting yourself up for failure. And so what I've done, especially in this space, is I read a ton. You read market analysis, whether it's Forrester or Gartner. You read competitive insights. I spend time with the sales teams on when we win, when we lose, just to get a sense of why are we winning, why are we losing, and what's the role that technology plays there. And so I use that to sort of get insight on relevancy and where are we in terms of the overall technology curve. And then when it gets down to the specifics of technologies, whether it's platforms or OSs, I'm not a deep technical guy, but I make sure I have those people on my team. And then the key piece that I do is I listen to them, right? And I give space to the engineers and the architects on my team to come talk to me, and I make their input valuable.
Some developers and business technology type people love just to stay in the pocket and just want to work on technology, want to code, want to do that stuff. And then there's these other people that's the first step to where they want, and they're more interested in the business, they're more interested in management, want to get to that leadership role like you've gotten to. If you look back and you could give yourself advice back when you were 20 years old, now, what would you tell yourself to do that what you did that was correct, and what else you could have done?
So it's a great question. So for me, I wish I'd become a deeper coder, which is really interesting now because so I grew up in Accenture, and I think Accenture had a very standard process. You start off. I remember going to St. Charles and learning C++, and then I even learned a little COBOL along the way. And there was this idea of you needed to be able to code to have credibility and broad understanding of what you were pitching to clients. And I get that. But the coding really only lasted for about 6 months to a year. And then you quickly moved into these leadership roles. And that was the Accenture formula, and it worked. It was a good formula. But I actually wish I could sling some code.
What do you think you did do well that got you to where you're at? That you did have that focus on, that propelled you, that maybe some others may not have?
I think I focus on the business.
Okay.
I think that's always been my eye. I think I focus on what are we trying to achieve, not technology for technology's sake. I'm never going to get into a .NET Java argument with anyone, right? I focus on what are we trying to achieve.
What's one thing that you do in a leadership role that might be a little bit different than other people?
I think I try and stretch the hell out of my team. And it's interesting because you have to find the talent that matches the way you lead. But I firmly believe that you got to give the people you work for as much rope as possible, and as much guidance and as much coaching. But I think autonomy and empowerment are two of the biggest tools that you can use in developing your talent. And I just firmly believe you got to do that. You have to be able to let your team run.
Then you're supposed to say that you're supposed to work your way out of the job.
Yep, that too. Well, I think you have to be.
Do you really believe that?
Absolutely.
To start and work your way out of a job?
Yeah, absolutely. I think because
is that scary for people though? Don't they want to keep their job?
It's not scary for me. Because in the end, I don't view myself as being at the end of my career, right? There's always something else that I want to do.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be able to leave a legacy of competence behind you as you move forward. I firmly believe. I mean, I feel like I've heard people say this. I actually think one of the biggest tributes to good leaders are when you look at their progeny, if you will. And you hear this a lot in coaching. Like you hear this all the time in sports coaching. Sort of who are all the Bobby Knight disciples, or who are all the the Krzyzewski disciples.
Yep.
And I love that idea.
So yeah, that was the first time I've been to Bull Run, but this it's really good. I want to do a cappuccino, but it's way too hot outside to do that right now.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine.
So moving to something a little bit different, there's something you and I have in common that not a lot of people have in common. we both have 5 kids.
Making babies.
Yeah, making babies.
Yeah.
And you know, in today's kind of world, you don't really see that often.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to ask about, to me, they always say, how do you guys do that? And typically my answer is not always successfully, but you know, we're always trying.
Yeah.
How do you answer that question? Is that a question that you get asked?
I get asked a lot. I mean, I get asked a lot. People always say, how do you juggle everything?
Yeah.
And the first thing I always say is, I'm nobody's example of balance. I do what works for me, right? And so if you wanted to look at me and say, you know, like work-life balance, like I don't know what that is. And for me, I look at, do I have the time to tend to what's important in my life? And work is one of those things. It doesn't float to the top of the list, but it's one of those things. And so I'm intentional about where I spend my time. I'm intentional about things like I take my kids' birthdays off from work. Always have, always will. You know, and there have been times where, you know, once or twice where you run into a conflict and you figure out a way to juggle. But I set my boundaries and I stick to them.
Mm-hmm. So I always look at it as not work-life balance, but I think there's work, there's family, and then there's personal.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think people group family and personal together, but I think it's very separate. I think people really need time for themselves too. So is there some activity you do, somewhere where you go?
I fish. I fish from a kayak.
Oh, really?
Which is a very solitary thing to do. So I have a 14-foot fishing kayak. I throw it on top of my car. I fish the city lakes. I try to do lakes where there's no boats.
Really?
And I fish the city lakes, and you know, I get up 5, 6 in the morning and I go do that. And that is my solitary time.
Is that something you only do on the weekends, or you do it before work?
You know, I only on the weekends now. I've toyed with this idea of, you know, could I ever do it after work or before work or something like that? Before work would be tough. Yeah. But after work, I've never done it though. In all the years I've been kayak fishing, I've actually never gone and, you know.
So what kind of kayak do you have?
It's a 14-foot Wilderness Systems TARPON, and I've rigged it up. You know, I've used a milk crate to build a rod holder, and you know, I put a depth finder on it and the whole 9 yards. So.
I think there's a lot of people that are in the corporate world that act as athletes, and they're corporate athletes. Thinking in terms of that, do you spend a lot of time training in the role that you're in or learning?
I do. I mean, you know, to think of it as a corporate like for me, it's all about skills, right? You know, and so in going from Target to this role, there are muscles here that I'm exercising that I never really got to exercise at Target. Are
there books that you've read that influenced you?
Good to Great.
Good to Great?
Yeah.
What about Good to Great?
I think the simplicity of leadership, what struck me about Good to Great, you know, when I read it years ago now, is the whole idea of superstar leadership or superstar companies versus the simplicity of approach, the simplicity of style, the simplicity of strategy. Because I'm not a brainiac, right? I'm not going to be one of those guys who's going to sit down for 4 hours and come back to you with the biggest, brightest, greatest strategy that's out there. I will help my team come to that.
Cool.
Look at that timing. That's perfect. That's great. Well, thank you. That was fun.
Yeah.